Ladies and gentlemen, today is October 8th, 2017, and this is the KNKL Show, episode 355, where we learn to be better artists. My name is Kienan Lafferty, and I'd like to welcome you to another show. Today, we're going to be talking about good artist habits, and of course, a couple of bad ones we want to avoid. And today, we're going to be focusing on coloring up a piece for Inktober, one of the latest pieces that we're doing here. For those of you who've been following me on Instagram, you see this cute witch girl. I decided that I was going to create a new piece with her in it, and we're going to be having some fun with that. I'm going to be walking you through how I got to this point. Then we're going to be having a little bit of a lecture, a little bit of a thoughtful. And yeah, I figured a good way to do that while entertaining you is I will be coloring this and sort of simultaneously walking you through that process as well as talking. Okay, so let's talk about our first point. The first habit, first good art habit to have is you always want to be asking yourself questions. So, case in point, I got to this piece and I was like, okay, I got a question. How do we take this witch girl that we enjoyed and inject some new flavor to this, inject some more story, narrative, flow lines, you could say. And this is the first thing that you want to be asking is like, how do I make my character appealing? And how do I create poses or compositions that will lead my viewer's eyes? Here you can see the blue arrows representing what I call the flow line. Flow line is something that happens inside of your character that just automatically gives it a sense of flow. It gives it a sense of gravity, a sense of living. There's things that are in it that just flow and move together. There shouldn't be a lot of janky, shouldn't be like Lego shapes or Tetris shapes going on in your piece. Not necessarily within your character. You don't want to be able to do this type of stuff, okay? You want smooth, flowing lines in your organic bodies, okay? So we've got two poses that we like here. We got one from the front, we got one from the back. And of course, we all know which one we were in favor of. That's right, of course, it's the front one. Why would we ever want the other one? Just kidding. No, but I did experiment with the front piece, and I was like, okay, well, how can we create an interesting story here? Well, one of the ways that I really like to introduce more narrative into my pieces is to create more characters, have more than one character interacting. Now, this used to be a personal weak spot of mine. I always just wanted to draw one cute girl on the piece and just have it be fine, right? But then I discovered that by adding additional pieces to the additional characters to the piece, it can inspire narrative. It can inspire your viewers to start saying like, hey, who is this? Who is this character right here? That's a cute little bat creature. You know, how do they interact? Are they friends? Did she capture it? Is she going to eat it? I don't know. It's like there's questions that will ruminate in the minds of your viewers. And that is why we like to ask questions. So I started with this one. I'm like, this is okay, but I also want to experiment with the other one. I was like, okay, so how do we take this booty shop and make it a little bit more classy? My answer was, well, okay, she's a witch, so let's have her on a broom, okay? That way we can have a little touch of that sexiness, but not overtly, right? It's just that pinch of sexiness in there, and the brew, the cauldron, the witch's cauldron. And we got to a nice point where things are starting to feel a little bit more balanced. I'm liking this. And this piece here, trying to figure out what I'm going to do with this other leg. I don't really know what to do here. I was going to kind of draw it just kind of mimicking this other one. Oh, another reason why I really liked this pose was because it gave us a chance to start integrating perspective and foreshortening and really giving this character a cool sense of depth. So that way it can be a great exercise for us as well. So you can see the leg was right there, and I was like, well, what if we took that leg and we bent it more towards the viewer? So now the leg here is now coming more at us, creating the sense of, oh, this character must be like turning the broom. Do you see if this was in 3D space? There's like this feeling of like this arch. There's an ellipse that's happening here. And the character feels like, okay, it's going this way, then this leg is going this way, and then the broom is going down. So there's this feeling that the character is turning, even reinforcing our line of action and flow in our piece down to the perspective. And that is something that arguably, well, actually it's not even arguably, this was totally accidental. And I was like, whoa, that actually looks really nice. And I decided to play off of that. It made me look smart. So I was like, let's roll with that. Let's roll with that. So the next thing that I did was I started adding in some additional details such as, okay, well, we got the broom. We got to make sure we have the bristles showing. There is something that I still need to resolve in here, and that is how the dress is going to be flying up. And we can see like the petticoat and all the cool little ruffles that are happening in there. But everything else I was really liking. I like the way that the panties looked. I like the way that the stockings looked. I really like stockings for this reason. It's because, especially on these striped ones, It allows us to reinforce the ellipses that are happening on the leg. And you can see that here in the final piece. Let me go ahead and back out of this just a little bit. Okay, there we go. So we've got that one, and then we get to here. So you can see by adding on the stripes, it allows us to really reinforce what's happening with the ellipses in this leg. And it allows us to show the depth. And I really, really like that. Okay, so with all that out of the way, let's go ahead and jump into our good old coloring. So we have a couple major colors that are laid down here. And let me tell you the reason why I chose these. Because even now, just looking at this, I feel like it's a very balanced, interesting color palette. It's a very balanced, interesting color palette. And let me tell you why. Well, the first thing that I said, okay, I want this to be a dark, kind of bluish sky night with this bright yellow moon in the background, right? Leading to our Halloween kind of spooky sense. So I picked this single color. Which was this blue. And I just laid that down on the entire piece. Whoops. I laid this color down on the entire piece. Now here's a really cool way that you can begin creating color palettes on the fly. Now some people create color palettes by, I love how this is turning more into like a color theory class than actually talking about thoughtful stuff. But don't worry, we'll get to that. We'll get to that in just a second. We'll get to the thoughtful stuff as we get past this color diatribe. Okay, so I picked this blue. Now the first thing that I do whenever I'm creating a color palette is I always try to stay away from the right edge. If you're going to go all the way to the right, this is a fancy way of saying becoming fully saturated. Because do you see once I lay down this blue, like it starts to feel like a little weird. It starts to feel like not realistic, or it feels much more cartoony, which could be good. And I actually do like adding in some punch colors at the very end. But to start, I like to keep my colors controlled. Very, very controlled. And then immediately I start thinking of, okay, what is going to be the second color that we introduce to this mix that is going to balance it? Now, for those of you who understand what a color wheel is and how a color wheel works, you'll know that the opposite of blue is, of course, orange. So immediately I'm moving from blue up here on the color picker, and I'm heading on down to the orange area, the orange areas. And I'm saying, okay, well, let's have the major source of warm light in this be the moon. But notice how I don't make the moon this color. Notice how I throw in the moon, but I don't color the moon bright orange. Even though, actually, that kind of looks cool too. It kind of looks cool, but I wanted the feeling to be that the moon was the brightest thing in the piece. So do you see, as we just take the lightness meter, right, which you get to by hitting Control U, and we just lighten this moon up, do you see how by doing that on its own, it starts to give us a nice feeling to the picture? It immediately balances the picture out, because now we have, let's actually take a look at what color that is. Now we have a nice warm color mixing with our cool color, but both of them are semi-desaturated. And that's personally the feeling that I wanted to go for in this piece. I added in some additional colors at the bottom for the town. Now take a look at what I did here. So I'm hue shifting. I'm hue shifting towards purple, and I'm darkening. Hue shifting towards purple and darkening, but I'm still staying close to the left where things are desaturated, safe, controlled. Safe and controlled, like a lion at the zoo. A lion at the zoo is interesting to look at. As soon as you take away the cage and you're right there with it, it might be a little scary. I don't know how that ties into color theory, but just keep that in mind. I might find a way to tie that in at the end. But anyway, start controlled, because it's a nice way to get a good feeling for your piece. And then, here's the reason why. Is because finally, when you want to let the lion out of the cage, then you can go all the way up and to the right, and you can start incorporating crazy colors that will truly pop off, right? Pop off like a guy winning at Evo, okay? Now, check this out. So once I start laying in these colors, see how these are able to really, they just feel so vibrant and bright and awesome. And we like stuff like that. And here's another thing that I really like, is pressing lightly with the stylus to allow the colors to mix. Look at this color that we just created. This is very, very interesting. What is that? I just eyedropped that, and now I'm making mental notes for what's happening here. Oh, it's pushed us, we've hue shifted towards red. We're here, but now we're hue shifting. We came out the other end through the top end. We're now in the red territory, moving towards purple. We got that from mixing this bright orange. Isn't that interesting? Very, very interesting. Yet even just this color is very pleasing to us. It's very pleasing because it's mixing. Here's why. We're mixing this vibrant color with the controlled color that is behind it. Okay? We're mixing this color with the controlled color that is behind it. And that gives us a very nice color that mixes with our palette. Okay, awesome. So now that I got that out of the way, some cool ways to create some colors for your piece. Let's go ahead and get into those habits. Okay? And just like I said, the first one that I was talking about was questions. Always be asking yourself questions like, why does Kienan do it that way? Why does this pose look that ugly? Why do those colors look ugly? And, and you can begin to experiment and find things that work on your own. And that's the way that I've always done things, guys. That's the way that I've always improved at my art, is I've always asked, what can I be doing better? Who is doing things better than me? And how can I pluck that? How can I pick that, take it over here, and drop it into my giant ball of style, the giant ball, the amalgamation that I've created over years that I call style. I call it my style, but really it's just a bunch of stolen other people's styles. And that goes to the second thing, the second habit that I want to talk about today. And I'm just going to start jumping into this coloring. And for those of you watching, or for those of you who know the way that I like to work sometimes, is I don't have a plan for this. I'm just rolling with it to see what I get. And I'm picking colors that I like, and I'm moving along with it. So I'm just going to work without too much, well, I'm going to try to not do too much commentary and focus on the task at hand, which is talking about the next thing. I can't believe this is so bad. The next thing, which is staying humble, okay? This is supposed to be tying into what I was just talking about, okay? Looking for other artists that are better than you. Looking for other artists, and oh my gosh, could you actually believe that someone could actually be better than you? Okay, well, once you swallow that pill, then that opens up an amazing new world that says, hey, if other people are better than me, then that means they got something that I could learn from. Better yet, they got something that I can steal. They got something that I can take and put into my own work. And that's what I do. That's what I always do. I like to find other people's works that I really enjoy. And I like to steal. I like to steal stuff. And that can be something as, but I've taught you guys in the past the proper way to steal. And that is, you don't want to steal just from one artist. As soon as you start finding a pose from one, the facial structure, the facial treatment of another, right? They draw cute girls. Let's steal that treatment, put it over to here. The colors of this other person, the line art of another artist, and you mix that all together. You steal from all of them at the same time, then you're in a very, very happy place. And that's called the point where nobody can tell. The point where nobody can tell where you got your ideas from. It's now become uniquely yours. And that's why I like staying humble, because it allows you to basically take on the guise of the humble, the humble, honest artist. I can't believe I'm saying this. It allows you to take on the role of the humble, honest artist while secretly obtaining your dastardly plans. Obtaining and completing your dastardly plans of creating your very own art. And you know that it works because you've taken a bunch of things that have worked for other people in the past. Okay? So I'm just throwing these colors in there. I'm liking this and digging this. I got to figure out what color I want this character's hair to be. But first, let's go ahead and start with the skin. Now, the skin, I want to be very, very pale. Now, this has to do with color. This has to do with color relativity. And I have also done another tutorial on this. And that says, okay, well, we want to paint the color of the character's skin. We have a blue background, a blue atmosphere. So does that mean that we want to just pick peach? Do we want to pick peach and start laying that in? No, because do you see how that just feels so out of place? It doesn't feel like it belongs in the piece. It looks weird. It's too bright. It's too bright. So what if we took that color, what if we took that peach and we said, okay, well, let's imagine that there's not a bright white light shining on this. And let's go ahead and darken it down. And let's imagine what would happen if, let's say, the blue light of the atmosphere was all that was affecting this skin. Well, let's take a look at the color here. Well, peach is really just a very, very bright red. You can see over here on our color Richter scale, it's a red. Once we start adding blue to red, we get purple. We begin getting purple. So let's go ahead and darken that as well because we know that we're in shadow. And let's desaturate it. Now, would you believe me if I said that this color right here is the color of the skin? Well, you better believe me because I am 100% correct. Well, I'm correct enough for this. It works. It works. So let's go ahead and lay this in. Let's go ahead and lay this color in. And you should see that, lo and behold, this feels right. This feels right to our composition. And we can also lighten this up a little bit, start moving a little bit more towards red for areas like, let's say we want to highlight on this leg. Maybe it'll look something like that. It'll look something like this. Maybe a little highlight on this arm. Maybe on this part of the face, we want some lightness here. And another thing that really helps me to get the color relativity ball moving is to paint things that are straight white, such as the eyeballs and the teeth. Now, here's a great way to do this exercise. So don't paint white on the eyes, because do you see as you do this? Now it looks like the character's face is glowing. It looks too bright. We need to darken it down. So the same thing that we did with the peach and the skin, we're gonna do with the eyes. So we're going to darken it, and we're gonna add the blue of the atmosphere to it. Now watch what happens. Once we paint this color in, do you see how that feels like it belongs? Feels like this belongs with the rest of the piece. Boom, baby, boom. Let's go ahead and paint that orange in there. Really digging this orange. Really digging this orange. Now, of course, I don't want you guys to feel like you are defined by, don't feel like you always have to get your colors spot on. It's more important that they belong together, that they look like they belong together, than the fact that they are actually the right color. Because here, we're working with an Instagram piece. It's okay, it's stylized, it's cartoony. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be perfect. But it does need to invoke a sense of feeling. Now, that is the most important question that I want you guys to be asking yourself. And it's a good habit to get into early on. You can see here I'm adding a little bit of blush to the face, just to kind of give it a nicer feel. I'm trying to figure out what I want her hair color to be. I want it to be orange, but maybe it should be like a darker orange. Maybe it should be more like this color. Let's try this one. Hey, that's nice. But yeah, going back, actually, I want that to be more purple. I imagine this being more purple. Now I'm adjusting my colors on the fly to get the effect and the feeling that I want. Now going back to what I was talking about earlier, the most important question that I really feel, and the greatest habit that you can get into, is asking yourself, what feeling does my art create? What feeling does my art create for the people that are viewing it? But more importantly, what does the feeling create for me? What does it create for me as the artist? And this has to do with, you're going to make your best work when you're truly proud of yourself. You're going to be making your best work when you're truly proud of what you're doing, when you believe in what you're doing, and having a place where you can truly express yourself. I think that is a very healthy thing to do. I want you guys to be able to express yourselves in ways that make you feel proud, in ways that make you feel happy. And, you know, basically, screw what everybody else thinks. Screw what everybody else thinks about your art. You're doing it for you. But, of course, I know what you're thinking. Well, Keenan, you're teaching us to become concept artists. And if I have a client that says, oh, I want this, but I say, no, I stay true to my values and I don't do what other people tell me, you know, nobody's going to want to work with me. And of course, that's true. So the second thing that I want to go into is, how do you balance that? How do you balance being able to create things for yourself as well as getting clients and learning how to do what the client wants, learning how to set maybe your values aside. Well, maybe not your values. I think you should stay true to your values even in your work. But set your wants aside. Set your wants aside for the wants of your client. How do you do that? And I'll tell you how I've done it. And actually, doing Inktober has really opened my eyes to it. It's that you do both. You want to make sure that you take time. You want to take time to create your own projects. As well as, I really like that. That looks really cute. You want to make sure that you're taking time to create your own projects, as well as balancing it with your client work. Now, how do you do that? How do you balance it? Well, the simple answer is that it's hard. It's really, really hard. Because I'm sure for those of you who are working in the industry, or know people who are working in the industry, you'll know that a common thing that you hear from them is that, hey, Mr. Concept Art, professional art guy, are you still doing your personal work? Are you still making time to do things for yourself and experiment and try out, like create new characters, tell new stories that are just from your mind only? And most often the answer is no. And that is a bit of a problem. That is a bit of a problem. And some people, I think it's totally fine to go into phases of this. It's totally fine to go into phases of where you're just focusing on work, or you're just focusing on personal work, as well as, other times where you're saying, okay, I'm going to put my head down and really focus on making this project awesome. And because of that, I know that I'm going to have to sacrifice. I'm going to have to sacrifice my own personal work. But the only thing that I would urge you guys to do, the only habit that I would urge you guys to follow, is that you are conscious of what is happening. You're conscious of what is happening. Don't let it just drift into this feeling of like, well, I guess it's kind of like what I have to do right now. That's just the way it has to be. But you're not making a conscious, deliberate choice. You're not making a conscious, deliberate choice. And I feel that is it's very dangerous to go there. It's very dangerous to let your life just kind of drift and not purposefully design your work-life balance. Okay? And that is the next habit that I want to talk about. Designing your work-life balance and making sure that you are deliberately setting up your life so that way you can be happy with the result. Now, how do you do that? How do you do that? Well, the way that I do it, of course, I know this is going to make a lot of people roll their eyes, is that I write stuff down. Always write stuff down. I get a journal. I write down my goals. And I say this because every time I find myself being confused by what I want to do next, or if I'm feeling lost, oftentimes it's not because I'm actually lost. Oftentimes things are going quite well for me. Oftentimes things are just fine at work and things are pretty okay at home. But the problem is that I have drifted into neglect. I've drifted to the point where I have begun neglecting asking myself some important questions, such as, what's the next thing that I want to do? What am I building towards? And that is probably the most important thing that you can ask yourself, is what am I building towards? What's the next thing that I'm going to accomplish? And that can be something as simple as, it doesn't have to be something major. It could be something simple as, hey, I want to paint this witch girl for Inktober. Hey, I want to commit to drawing something new every day for Inktober. Or drawing something every other day. Set up your own goals. Make sure that they are attainable. In fact, at the beginning of Inktober, I said that I was soft committing to it because I didn't want to fully expect myself to draw something new every day. But curiously enough, by doing that, by saying that I'm not going to be committing everything to this, it's actually taken a lot of the pressure off. So sometimes setting your goals a little bit lower, setting easy goals, setting short-term goals can give you confidence to continue. It can give you confidence to continue with going for the big ones. Okay, I'm going to create a new layer here. I'm actually really liking this. So let's go ahead and take a quick look at this. Take a quick break. Let's go ahead and eyedrop these. And if you guys download this on Patreon afterwards, I would highly recommend that you do this as well. So what I want you to do is take the eyedropper and start eyedropping certain areas and asking yourself, oh wow, this is a controlled color. And then I want you to click here. Oh, wow, this is interesting. This is moving up more towards the right. This is becoming a more saturated color. I like to call it a punch color because it sounds cool. This is a punch color. Oh, this is a very controlled color, desaturated. And I want you to pay attention to what I'm doing here. Can you tell what I'm wanting the punch color to be in this? Yes, that's of course right. It is going to be our warm orange. It's going to be the warm oranges of the character's costume. Okay, now let's go ahead and continue with this. Let's continue with this. I'm going to go ahead and lay some colors in here. Another thing that I really like to do, and you might notice this, I'm laying in colors, but sometimes I press lightly to allow the background color to mix with it, to sort of just give me a color that I already know goes with this palette. And it just looks nice, just looks good. So I like to do that. The color of the hair, I almost want to make it orange. I want to play around with that, so I'm going to create a new layer. And I'm just going to paint this hair orange because I want to see what it looks like. Maybe we could even, maybe we could do it so that way the underside is orange. Kind of like the girl from yesterday. I had her with streaks in her hair, and I really liked the way that that looked. So we can have a little bit of both. It'd be orange in the hair. Orange pieces. That actually looks pretty cool. Ooh, I dig that a lot. I dig that a lot, guys. We're going to roll with that. Okay, cool. So this is looking quite good. Also, look at the broom bristles. Here's a good example. We all know what color broom bristles are, right? They're like this light kind of tan, but look at what color I actually picked. Oh, wow, it's like this dark desaturated red. Yet I look at that, and I say, oh yeah, that's the color of broom bristles in this environment, in this dark blue sky lit by that light. Yeah, those are broom bristles. Very nice. And that has to do with, again, color relativity. Color relativity, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, now another thing that I want to bring your attention to is the fact that we have created this piece so far with a lot of dark colors. We have this big bright moon in the background, and we want to make sure that that is affecting the character as well and being shown with the piece. And that is a lot easier to do. It's a lot easier to do when you start with your shadows. It's a lot easier to create this effect when you start with shadows. Now, I'm about to show you why that is. I'll lay in a little bit of this reflected light under here. I like the way that looks. I'm going to put some darker colors in here too. Darker colors. Darker colors. Cool. Let me consult my notes really quick. Okay. So as we move into this next part of the drawing, I want to talk about working on yourself and not comparing yourself to other artists and trusting in your gut. Now, these are things that you hear all the time. I'm not going to kid you and say, hey, I've come up with a brand new idea, and that is trust your gut. Oh, you shouldn't be comparing yourself to other artists. You should be trusting in yourself and believing in yourself and just know that everything is fine. And you notice how that's in direct competition to what I was saying earlier, and that is stay humble, understand that you're never the best. You should be aiming to be. You should definitely be aiming to be the best. And that is, of course, like a very vague term. It's like, it's very relative, right? But always be aiming to be the best that you possibly can be. And this is going to take me to the next thing that I want to talk about, and that is working on yourself. Working on yourself, putting the focus on working on your own style and trying to improve your own skills. Okay? And, oh, I almost forgot about this part of the hat. Okay, cool. So let's go ahead and get into that. This is really hard to do. This is super hard to do, to like color and also be talking about this at the same time. I'm actually really happy with the way that this is looking. So the next thing that I want to do here is I'm thinking that I want to, do I want to color some of these lines? Nah, let's not color the lines. Let's go ahead and just start adding in some punch colors. Heck yeah, let's do it. New colors. Let's just, in fact, name this layer punch. Name this layer punch. Okay, and I had a really good thing to start this talk out with. Oh yeah, working on yourself and not comparing. The balance of keeping your personal reasons front and center and why your biggest concern should be working on yourself and why that's actually going to help you with becoming like marketing yourself in the future. Okay? So the best way that I can put this is, okay, this is the part where it's going to get really fun because we're saying, okay, we've got this bright moonlight behind us. And how is this going to begin interacting with the colors that are present here? And it's going to start giving us stuff like this. It's going to start giving us really, really bright punch colors. I kind of want to put this on its own layer. It doesn't do it justice. It doesn't do it justice to have it behind the lines. We are going to do this. We are going to do this. Let's start laying in the colors like this. But yeah, working on yourself. Now this is an interesting topic that was brought up to me once in a motivational talk. And the saying went something like, learn to work harder on yourself than you do on your job. And I never understood what that meant for the longest time. But now I am starting to get it. I'm starting to get it because the best thing that you can do for your job and for the people that you work with is to be working on yourself mentally, working on yourself as far as your habits go. That's why we're talking about habits today, guys, because this is totally about becoming a great artist, and the fact that most of it, half of it has to do with actually getting the skill together, right? Half of it has to do with actually creating the skill where I can draw this. But then the other half comes from, hey, how do I keep myself mentally balanced enough to the point where I can be performing at a good pace at all times, for my team, for myself, for my family, for my bunnies, right? I got my bunnies over there. It's like you want to make sure that you are taking care of yourself and know how to keep your mind and your body running as a well-oiled machine. And that comes from a lot of different aspects in life. Probably the most notably, mental game. A lot of you might look at me and say, hey, Kienan looks like a fairly balanced guy. He seems like he's got it all together, and he's always happy. He's always excited to come on here and teach us. Man, I wish I could be like that. But I got to tell you that there are plenty of times. In fact, more often than not, especially as of late, I've been feeling quite lost. I've been feeling a little bit weird. I've been feeling not confident with myself. And that's a problem. That's a real problem that you need to go after. You need to go after that, and you need to ask yourself, why do you feel that way? Because at that point, it doesn't matter how good you are. It doesn't matter how much you've worked on your skills. It doesn't matter how amazing of an artist you become if you can't then take those skills and put them into practice. You need to be able to keep yourself balanced. You need to be able to keep yourself balanced. And that's what I'm trying to teach you guys today with these habits. I'm really liking the way this petticoat's looking. This is really fun. I love drawing petticoats. They're so... And see how I'm suggesting it. I'm just suggesting it with the colors and not drawing every single little line in there. Suggesting it with colors. I'm not too keen on this color. I don't know why. What is bothering me about this color? I feel like maybe it needs to be closer to this. Ah, yeah, that's right. That's it. That's the ticket. That's the ticket. We've also got this really bright moon in the background. So the last thing that I will leave you guys with as we kind of finish this up, is, let's see here. Oh, the last thing that I'll say is that as you learn how to become more balanced with your work, you will then be able to begin helping others. Now that is why I talk about putting yourself front and center, because you can't expect to help somebody else. You can't expect to help your client. You can't expect to help your boss, your team. You can't expect to do any of those things if you're not first helping yourself. And that's why I always tell you guys to take care of yourselves. Make sure that you are in a good mindset. I'm still not liking this. Why is this color bothering me? This color is bothering me to no end. try this again. Oh, you know what it is? I think I just figured it out. I erased all those other oranges in there, and I just left this one. Maybe it's because I was trying too hard to make the rim light have color to it. I think just doing this gives it all the color that it needs. Maybe just a tiny bit of color in there. Just a tiny bit of color right there. I think that's what it needed. I think that's it. Yeah. But yes, today was meant to tell you guys about the things that have been going through my mind lately as far as habits go. And realizing that those things can really sneak up on you. Things like just kind of coasting along, not worrying about where you're going with your art, what you're trying to achieve. Getting too bogged down into looking at other people's work, looking at other artists' work, thinking that yours has to be just as amazing. Even though, you know, you're comparing yourself too much. Don't feel like you have to get sucked into that, right? Don't feel like you have to get sucked into that. That's looking quite good. So that's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. There's definitely some things that we can improve upon, and I'm going to be doing that as I continue this. But I hope this was helpful to you guys, watching me actually pick these colors out and work with this. This was really actually a lot more challenging than I thought, drawing as well as trying to give this motivational talk at the same time. But I hope that I was semi-coherent. Hope this helped you guys out. And of course, as I said, yes, if you'd like to download this PSD on Patreon, the link is in the description as well as up top. Thank you guys so much for joining me again on another KNKL show. Thumbs up if you like it, thumbs down if you don't. My name is Kienan Lafferty. I'll see you guys next week. We'll be continuing Concept Art Bootcamp shortly. Yes. Shortly, we'll be getting back to Concept Art Bootcamp. And until then, you guys take care. I'll leave you some lovely lane. You guys stay awesome. See ya.